to introduce our own Reverend Dr. Ray, our senior minister, to give us today's message. Thank you.
So how is everyone today?
Great! Louder?
How is everyone today? So I understand, right. I'm glad you caught that. So I understand that while many are still on the beaches of Rehoboth or wherever they may be and, celebrating the last bit of summer before, I got this vacation, I got that. But we're here. We are here.
Yeah.
So let's make a mighty noise to say that we are here. We're glad we woke up this morning. We're glad we chose to come here. So how are you today?
Great!
Yeah, that's much better. We're going to have to work on this.
I can get louder
So,
if you really want it.
I got you, Doug. I got you. Talking about the rest of the choir. So today we're going to chat about a couple of things that seems like I push a lot of folks' buttons, don't it? So we're going to talk about something today. There you go. This idea of, because we already know we're talking about being excellent stewards of the earth, of this planet. However, in order to really talk about what that means, then we have to ask this question. Is your spirituality relevant? Now, I am not asking the question of, are any of these relevant? I'm not asking if science of mind, CSL is relevant. That's not the question. Those are, we are. The question is the filter through which you show up as your spirituality. Is it showing up in a manner that's relevant? So for those who saw me when last I was here, I mentioned both Jamaica and my recent trip to Mexico. Do you remember me mentioning this?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I mentioned was this realization that is now concrete for me, that we interpret our belief system, we interpret whatever we practice through the filter of who we are and how we show up. Anybody ever heard of liberation theology? I know at least one person in here has. Anybody in here ever heard of feminist theology? Why is there such a thing as liberation theology and feminist theology and rainbow theology, and I could go on? Because people have said that if I am Christian and what I am doing is seeing, witnessing, or maybe a part of someone else's oppression, how does my theology address this? How does my theology that is pretty masculine heavy, God is He, Lord He, Him, Father, He, Him, His, where are the women? Matthew, Mark, Luke, where's, there's Martha, there's Mary, and there's that Mary, but they don't really have major predominant roles. So feminist theology says, let's identify the women and understand that women have a sacred space in theology. So here we are with this thing that we do, science of mind, religious science. And we have to ask the same kind of question. How is our spirituality relevant? Last week I was in Massachusetts, in Amesbury, at Unity on the River, and I asked this question of folks in the congregation. Do any of you, I know there's at least one millennial in the room, I know that for a fact. What are important to millennials today? Because what many churches and spiritual whatevers have said that millennials aren't showing up in churches. What'd you say? So, in a broad scope of, if there are millennials dropping out of, now there are millennials that are showing up, but when you look at the vast scope of, they're not showing up in the numbers that we are. And if you were to just look around right now, note how many women versus how many men versus how many people of color. And those are the things that we can identify just by appearance. But you can't identify from appearance LGBTQ, trans. You can't identify any of that by appearance. But are we represented? So there's this idea of millennials want representation. They want to know that the things that are important, saving the planet, ending oppression, justice, etc., they want to know that those things are being addressed by their spirituality. So the question comes up with us. So I put this there, it says, there will come a day when people of all races, colors, and creeds will put aside their differences. They will come together in love, joining hands in unification to heal the earth and all her children. They will move over the earth like a great whirling rainbow, bringing peace, understanding, and healing everywhere they go. All living things will flourish, drawing sustenance from the breast of our mother, the earth. There's a prophecy, generally is referred to as a prophecy, of the rainbow warrior by many native indigenous cultures. And they pretty much all say the same thing, that there will come a time when the earth will be so ravaged that a group of individuals will step forward and say, not anymore. And note, it said, there will come a day when people of all races, all colors, and all creeds. So it's not talking about just the indigenous Americans. It's not their role or responsibility. It's their prophecy that says they will join with everyone else to make this a reality. So then the question comes back to this idea. So just pause and marinate on what this means as we continue. So there's this circle of concern, and there's a circle there, and there's a circle of interest, and there's a circle there, and there's a circle of usefulness, and then where they intersect. What are people concerned about? What is of interest to people? And what is useful? Know what Marianne said? There's this ability to know what to do and know what not to do. How many people in here cook? You use your stove to make a meal? If you're frying chicken and a fire breaks out, how much water do you throw on the fire? Zero. Oh, so you know what not to do. What do you do? Baking soda. Or salt. Put the lid over. Oh, and you know what to do. Therein lies this whole idea of how do we get to a state of consciousness where we know not only what to do, because we say, pray, like that's the general answer, pray. Get that answer a lot in our movement, pray. Okay? And then what not to do. Don't march, don't protest, don't do this, don't get involved in politics, don't do that. Okay, I hear what you're saying. But I have a question. Ted, if I may ask you, how much of sound would have been set up if you walked in the room, sat right there where Lisa is, and prayed for it to be?
Could have been a miracle, but none.
Right? In our movement, we say, treat and move your feet. So in our own lexicon of stuff and phraseology of stuff, we know that there has to be a moment of action. Because if Queenie had come in and just sat down and prayed and said, knowing that there is only one coffee pot and one coffee pot only and coffee grounds that are going to be, she could treat about it. But we know that there is also the practice of pray, knowing that it is a right and perfect cup of coffee that will be made for everyone who partakes of it, and that it will move forward with ease and grace and not cause problems. It's that right, we know this, but then what she does is begin to do the process. Move the cart out, set it up, water, etc. Same thing for everything that every one of the greeters and Nancy and everyone and Michael and everyone, because you can pray programs knowing that there are only one program in the ultimate cosmos of, and that program is folding itself right here in this moment. Okay, let me pray a little harder. Knowing that the program, right? But it's a process of knowing and then folding and then placing. But we don't like that action piece. We don't like the piece that, so there's this, what you want to say, what they're interested in, and then that piece of relevance. There are a lot of ministers that I know, not just in our movement, who only say what they know people want to hear. And if you only say what you know people want to hear, how many have children? Or younger siblings that you sort of treated them like they were your children? If you only told them what they wanted to hear, you can stay out as long as you want, drink as much alcohol, and throw cocaine in the air and just roll around in it like you told them whatever it is they wanted to hear. What good is that? We have a phrase, tough love, that means we speak to them in a way that we know that you're not going to like what I have to say. But in order for you to be the best human you can be, to be as healthy as you can be, to be as well as you can be, then I'm going to have to say some things that you're not going to like. Such as, no. No, you cannot go over that person's house. No, you cannot borrow the car. No, you cannot date that person. No, 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 no. Sometimes no is the most loving thing we can say to someone. So there are times when we have to elevate how we are showing up with this whole spiritual practice, however it is showing up in our lives. That's why I said, it's not about is religious science, science of mind, or any of the other world religions. It's not about if they are relevant. How am I internalizing what I am learning from that select path? And how am I showing up in the world with it? Anybody know what these are? Apartments. They look fancy? They look nice? So suppose Lisa lives here, Dawn lives here, Marianne lives there, and then we can be wherever else in here we want to be, right? Suppose in this apartment, someone starts a fire. Well, it's in this apartment though. What's that got to do with the rest of the apartments? I heard someone say everything. What do you mean by everything? How is it everything? It's in their apartment.
But it's not confined to that, it spreads.
Oh, so what happens in one? Because one of the things I hear is it's happening in your consciousness. Racism, homophobia, sexism, etc. It's in your consciousness. There's one mind. That mind is God's mind. And if there is one mind that we are accessing and making use of, and my mind is tapped into fire in whatever form it's showing up, then it is now in the mind of God, which means when I'm setting fire in my mind to my apartment, in my consciousness, it does affect Dawn. It affects Reverend Henry. There is nothing that happens in isolation. So right here, right now, today, there's something going on in a particular place in this planet. There's an apartment on fire. It's not even just an apartment. It's the entire building. And what we know is that when this building, which is on fire, has ended, that which it has burned up is gone. It cannot come back. In the same way that if I take a saw and saw off my left arm. Now there are doctors who can reattach, but will my arm ever be untouched again. No. There is so much going on the face of this planet right now that so many of us... Okay, so, you know how I just mentioned this whole thing about saying things that people don't want to hear? So, CSL, we have a minister's listserv. And ministers, we get into things on the minister's listserv, whatever. So something was recently mentioned, and normally I don't comment, but I commented. And I asked the question about, is our teaching, is our philosophy meant to be a philosophy of self-gratification and masturbatory spirituality, where we are so focused on ourselves and not creating or procreating a world that works for all?
Who wanted to hear that?
Are we, huh?
Who wanted to hear that?
Right. Not many. Got a couple of emails from folks where they're like, thank you for saying that. I'm still laughing about the way you phrased it. But the idea is, if we are not doing, with this spiritual practice, doing the difficult work, then what's the point? So last week, well, first of all, did anybody read this magazine, Science of Mind magazine?
Yes.
So specifically the one about Asilomar? So Asilomar, anybody who doesn't know what Asilomar is or why it's on the cover of the magazine? So Asilomar was the go-to retreat place when Holmes was alive in physical human form. That was the place to go. Go there, spiritual retreat, renewal, rejuvenation, da 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 da. And so for years it was there, and then some things happened and it ended and hadn't been there until last week. First time in many years where we, as CSL folks, had the opportunity to go back to Asilomar. Now, I wasn't there, but because I had just gotten back from Mexico. But I was reflecting on Holmes's Sermon by the Sea, and I just want to share a little smidget of it. So one of the things he says, it seems to me that it is only as we view all life, everything from what we call great to what we call small, important or unimportant, it is only as we view the whole thing. Or as Alexander Pope said, one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul. That we shall really enter into communion, into sympathetic oneness and rapport with the reality of all that is about us. Someone asked me, what do you think God is? I looked out the window and said, I think God is that tree. And there was a squirrel running up the tree, and I said, I think God is that squirrel. It is going to be absolutely impossible for us, with our finite comprehension, to have the intelligence to divide the indivisible and to say this is real and this is unreal. The marketplace is as real as the temple. That is why Jesus said that it is neither in the temple at Jerusalem nor in the mountain, but in yourself, that the secret of life is discovered. That the soul of the universe is consciously entered into, and the divine and benign spirit which indwells everything is loosed, and its splendor and power through you, through your partnership with the infinite, through your oneness with God and the living Spirit. We are part of the evolution of human destiny. We are part of the unfoldment of the divine intelligence in human affairs. It has reached the point of conscious and deliberate cooperation with that principle of evolution and the outpush of the creative urge of the Spirit on this planet, at least to bring about innumerable centers in which it may enjoy. So, how are we making love, making consciousness, not this syrupy, soft, woo-woo thing, but making it an active, committed, and focused way of showing up in the world. And that goes back to, we each have to individually ask ourselves. For example, I think I mentioned this before. For example, there's Chick-fil-A. There are a lot of people who eat at Chick-fil-A. I know a lot of gay people that eat at Chick-fil-A. Even though the corporation of Chick-fil-A spends a good deal of their money on anti-LGBTQ organizations. And I've asked LGBTQ brothers and sisters, wait, you eat waffle fries? Where do those come from? Those come from Chick-fil-A. Why are you eating those? You know, I just, Ray. So I say, I got a question for you. If you knew for a fact that the money wasn't going to anti-LGBTQ, but you knew it was going to kill children in Africa, you knew that's where the money was going. Oh yeah, I'd give it up. So when it comes to your gay brothers and sisters, they're not as important. Like, you can quantify and judge and evaluate in a different way. Gotcha. So when you're turning on the water before you brush your teeth, how long is the water running while you go do other things? Because that goes into this entire thing of climate. When we open the refrigerator, how long are we looking for whatever we're looking for? Especially if we are like some folks. I need something. So are we thinking that the refrigerator is magic, that close it? When I open it again, that which I desire to be pizza will be there. It is not. That which I desire to be hamburger, well, it's not. Like, are we expecting at some point, one of those magical times, that something that wasn't in there the last 15 times will now be in there? Yeah. But every time we open it, energy. Plastic straws, styrofoam. Of all the things that are recycled, they say that approximately 10% is actually recycled. When do we get to the point where we recognize that just because the fire is here, it affects whoever's in here? When do we understand that this spiritual practice, this spiritual philosophy, yes, it is about individual consciousness and how because I cannot force, no matter how much I try or beg or bargain with Robin, if Robin does not want to do what Robin does not want to do, those who know Robin knows Robin ain't doing it. I don't care what superintendent or principal or counselor says, Robin, you need to do this with that child. Robin will say, boop, hold up. I know the child, and I know what's best for this child, and that's not it. So you might want to go sit down before I sit you down. Right? So there's this idea that we can want to change others, but we can't. This is one reason why I personally am glad that the Twitter trolls and Facebook trolls let people know that they are racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever. Because the moment that you silence them, they go right back underground. And so we're having a meeting next Saturday. The United members of the KKK will be getting together and oh yes, we love black people. Yeah, yo, my best friends are black. It's better to know. I've asked people, would you rather know that your house has termites or not? Everybody says they would rather know. But once we know, what does this philosophy ask us to do? One, we love them anyway, as challenging as that is, but we don't love them because they are racist. We don't love them because they're sexist. We don't love them because they're homophobe. We love them because it's God showing up. So we love the God essence of them. while still addressing them the way they need to be addressed. Emma Curtis Hopkins says, whoa, time out. Don't think just because you have this philosophy that you're not still supposed to put people in jail or in insane asylums if that is how they are showing up. While they are in jail, while they are in the insane asylum, pray. But don't let them get away and do whatever it is they want to do. No. This philosophy should be calling us to higher levels of accountability and truth. That when I go on Facebook or wherever and I see this white guy who's naked running around after having supposedly killed 3 people, and he's taunting the police and attacking them, and he still gets taken into custody without harm. Wait a minute, what were you doing? You were supposedly selling loose cigarettes and you got choked to death. You were on the playground with a toy gun and got shot in less than 15 seconds of the officer getting out of the... I don't understand. And if I, as a minister, as a human, am not addressing and speaking about this, then there's no point in doing what we do. So the question is, there's a passage in, anybody familiar with Genesis? Just asking. So, Genesis 1:28.
Awesome name.
Genesis 1:28 from the New American Standard Version. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish in the sea and the birds of the sky and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, I don't like that whole concept of subdue and rule over, right? So, doing what Ray does, Ray went and looked at some etymology of stuff. But part of that, it came down to, then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, govern the earth, fill the earth and govern it. Fill the earth and govern it, rather than subdue and rule over. So then I dug a little deeper. So the idea of to subdue, while it does have the idea of to conquer and whatever, there is this part of to draw away, to withdraw. And one of the other words that comes out of that, subduce, which is to remove oneself. So what if the metaphysical aspect of this is saying that in order to replenish the earth and to govern, we must withdraw. We must remove that aspect of ourselves that wants to take and take and take and acquire more and more and more and more. And so where in our consciousness, because once again, that's where it all begins. So where in our consciousness does that show up? There's a woman by the name of Ellen, who has a television show, if anybody's familiar with her. So Ellen, I don't remember what it was, but she was giving out swag, and she wanted to see how honest people were. So she set hidden cameras and told people that were coming in, take one item for yourself, and then circle around and come into the studio, whatever. So this woman came, and she took a hat, she circled around, and she came back, and she took a cup, circled around, and she took about 6 or 7 things of whatever the 10 that were offered. And Ellen called her out on it, like, well, why? And she said, well, my sister couldn't be here, so I got it for her. And Ellen said, a lot of people's sisters couldn't be here. For me, calling people out is accountable spiritual practice. When we know, I don't need to take 4 of these. Why am I taking 4 of these? Because the consciousness of the country is greed. The consciousness of the country is consume. That's why we're called consumers. We consume. There are other things in nature that do that. Cancer consumes. It devours. Doesn't produce. It doesn't create. It just devours. So the question becomes, back into this idea of, are we spiritually relevant as an individual? And the idea of this rainbow warrior idea, when we know what's going on, when we know that our neighbor's apartment is burning, we know that our neighbor is being beaten. There's a musician, I want to say Martina McBride.
Yeah.
She sings a song called Concrete Angel about the neighbors who know that a young girl is being beaten. They know and they do nothing. And then she gets beaten to death. If we are going to be accountable in our spiritual practice, and we are really going to talk about what love is, and what light is, and what joy is, and what peace is, and all of these great things that we talk about in our philosophy, if we are really, 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 really going to do it, and not be a philosophy or a movement of self-gratification and masturbatory spiritual practices for the purposes of, I feel good. They're in cages, but I'm good. They're hungry, but I'm good. They're being shot, but I'm good. I understand what you're going through, but I'm good. And so I'm going to syrup my love all over everything. Whatever it is that you are going through, God is all there is. And as long as you love, Ernest Holmes was a white man at a time when segregation was legal. And a lot of this philosophy is birthed out of white privilege. But if we don't dissect and dig in and find the places where this is how it applies to us in 2019, 2020, then how are we any different than a doctor that you go to who's going to fix your root canal by putting a leech on your cheek? Medical advances change as time changes. Science and technology change as time changes. That's evolution of science, evolution of medicine, evolution of, but are we not going to have an evolution of spirituality? If we want to save this, one house, many neighbors, many families, apartments. And if we want to know that everyone on this small blue marble is okay, and we really want to talk to them and talk about them and acknowledge them as there is only one, then we need to start saying, I am not my brother's keeper, I am my brother. I am not my sister's keeper, I am my sister. And what happens to anyone is happening to me. And then roll up our sleeves. After we got up off of the prayer cushion, took the prayer shawl off, blew the candle out, the incense is burned down. After all of that is done and over with, then it's time to hit the streets in one way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean everyone does the same thing. But everyone can write a letter to a congressman or woman. Everyone can show up at a city council meeting and see what's being said about your neighborhoods and your districts. Everyone can show up as the presence of, first of all, let me ask a question, and then I'm going to shut up. How many of us have ever actually gone to a city council meeting just to observe? When you were there, would you venture to say you may have been the only religious scientist, new thought, science of mind person there? I mean,
Probably.
because
Probably.
it's very possible.
Nobody was wearing a t-shirt.
But it's very possible, right? And I say that because a lot of times when our Christian brothers and sisters show up, they're identifiable. There's a collar, there's something that we can identify clergy. Most of the time we don't have any identifiable paraphernalia that, says, oh, you have a yarmulke. Well, I know you're not Baha'i, you're Jewish. Like I recognize, oh, you have a collar, so you're probably not a gotcha. So we understand.
That's why I want a bumper sticker.
I got you. But the idea that the fact that you showed up, you brought your consciousness of whatever it was into that room. What if more of us started doing that? Not saying run for office, I'm saying show up. Be present. And when you hear people saying things about your district, when you hear that this place is roach infested, rat infested, where no human would ever want to live, What does your spiritual practice call you to do? What does it call you to now be in the world? Because however we are showing up is how it affects this. And if I'm part of the problem, I'm the arsonist in the apartment, something's wrong with that picture. Let's pray. Simply allowing ourselves to anchor into this moment and breathe. Relaxing in the breath. Allowing that which is ease and grace to wash over us. Allowing the body to shake loose and let go of any tension, any anxiety, any discomfort from either what was said or what came up in feeling or any other ideas or thoughts, memories, worries, stressors, letting it all go. And simply focusing on this moment, this breath, this inhale and this exhale. And in this place of ease and grace, I speak what I know. That which God is all there is. Showing up in every form and every effect and every condition, yet no less God. It's all God. It's God acting upon itself, and knowing that it is God acting upon itself, I know that anything that I do, everything that I think, everything that I say, everything that I personally do as an action is God thinking, God speaking, and God doing. And so I allow my mind to raise higher so that I am walking in spiritual integrity to that which I know to be truth and love and light and the magnificence of creation. I allow every thought that crosses my mind, every feeling that crosses through my body, every emotion, every idea to have its space, knowing that I, accessing that one mind, that one life, get to determine which thoughts are more beneficial and less beneficial. In the same way that I know that throwing baking soda or putting the lid on is more appropriate to stop a fire of grease and oil than to throw water. I know that if there is an electrical fire, throwing water on it is not the... So I know that there are thoughts and feelings that I am throwing water on when that is not the appropriate response. And so right now, with these words, I surrender that. I surrender that into the awareness that I know that there is a higher way of being, a higher state of showing up. And so in gratitude, I step into that. In gratitude, I know that these are not simply the words that are true for me, but that they are true for every person in this room. And every person that every person in this room knows. And every person that every one of us crosses paths with, sees or speaks to. It's all God. It's all light. It's all life. And so in gratitude, I surrender this into the law that already knew, that was already active. The law that takes that which love points the way to, and law says yes to it. Surrendered into the law because I know it is already showing up. It is already being acted on right here and right now. Surrendered because I know in the mind of God and in this thing called the one life, it is already so. And knowing that it is so, together we as a beloved spiritual community anchor this truth by saying, and so it is.